I started working on a story about a scandal in the ballet world. My name is Alice Robb, and I'm a contributing writer for Vanity Fair. It was a business story about a ballet company that turned into a murder investigation. So in 2016, Ashley married a much older man. Together, they made a plan to start a new ballet company. Ashley's dream was to create a ballet company that would be a home for dancers who were unconventional.
She didn't want a cookie-cutter company. She wanted girls that were tall, girls that were short.
You know, I am taller, so I thought that this would be a great fit for me.
I don't know that Doug could spell ballet before he met Ashley. But, you know, when you love somebody, what do you want to do? You want to make her happy.
Ashley was 24 and Doug was 54. They knew each other for approximately 13 days before they got married. Ashley was sending photographs of herself to Doug constantly. She was, you know, a bikini model at some point, and she knew how to work it. She knew how to use it.
His major concern is, how's he going to introduce Ashley to Eva?
I felt like Ashley was taking my dad away from me.
Ashley wants to win total affection. She wants to be number one.
She would go through periods where she was just raging at Doug.
She flip-flops between he's a great guy who everybody knew him as, or he's evil. Good or evil, good or evil, good or evil.
She goes to live with her mother and effectively cuts off all communication with Doug. He's begging her to talk about things, give him another chance. Meanwhile, she accused him of trying to poison her.
She's accused him publicly of murder, attempted murder.
Was Doug Benefield dangerous?
They both had a lot of guns, and there was an incident where, during an argument, he shot a gun into the ceiling. After the case with the poisoning allegations, I saw a picture of the two of them, you know, arm in arm, attending a gala together and looking like a happy couple.
He was so hopeful and optimistic that everything would be all right.
Every time she made allegations, she always came back to him and gave him hope of reconciling.
At some point, Ashley said that she wanted to move to Maryland together and start over as a family.
They were packing up her house in Florida.
I heard somebody screaming outside.
And she shot him.
She walks next door, gun in hand, and tells the neighbor, I shot Doug in self-defense.
It was right next door to me. She just came over. Her estranged husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
Was she genuinely afraid or just trying to get her way?
Since Black Swan came out, I think that's a lot of people's only window into ballet, which sucks. But this certainly does parlay into that narrative.
To Doug, Ashley's this innocent, pure white swan. But underneath those white feathers, she's the Black Swan.
Do you remember your last conversation with your dad?
He tried to call me, but I didn't pick up because I was at work. I said, I'll call you later. Never called him because I assumed everything would be all right. I'd get a Bible verse next morning and I'd call him and everything would be okay.
Eva Benefield got a Bible verse by text every morning from her father, Doug. It was their daily ritual. But on September 28th, 2020, that Bible verse never came, a sign that everything was not okay.
I was freaking out and I spammed him with text messages. I called him.
Out of desperation, she began Googling the names Doug and Ashley Benefield and accident with Florida man. Later that day, Eva called an uncle who had texted her.
And I said, "What's wrong with my dad?" And he said, "There's been an accident." And I said, "She killed him, didn't she?" And he said, "Yeah, she shot him twice."
Hang on, those were the first words out of your mouth? Where was that coming from?
I just had a gut feeling. I drove a couple blocks down the road to my friend's house, and they saw that I was crying, and they said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Ashley killed my dad."
It was a tragic end to a relationship that began at a dinner in Florida back in August of 2016. Doug met Ashley and felt like he'd been struck by a thunderbolt.
He just immediately thought Ashley was the most beautiful, the most amazing person in the world.
Writer Alice Robb wrote a piece about the Benefields for Vanity Fair. Doug was from Charleston, South Carolina, a consultant who worked with technology companies and defense contractors. The two had bonded over conservative values and guns.
The night that she met Doug for the first time, she had guns on her person, in her purse, in her bra.
Stephanie Murphy, Doug's family attorney, says that when Ashley first met Doug, she was working in the Sarasota campaign office of Donald Trump. Her job was to help galvanize the evangelical vote and work the rallies.
You can see video of her on the internet, throwing things into the crowd, getting people really excited.
Aside from her work in politics, Ashley had also been a fledgling swimsuit model and a dancer with the Maryland Youth Ballet, where she was sometimes a featured performer, as in this piece from The Nutcracker.
I've seen videos of her dancing. She was definitely a good, well-trained dancer.
Days after they met, Doug left the country on a short business trip, and by the time his plane was landing back in the United States, the heart emojis were flying fast and furious.
They were saying "I love you" to each other within, I think, a week or so.
Doug was deeply religious, and his friends believed he wanted to marry Ashley before he was intimate with her.
What did he say to you?
Will you marry us?
Trip Cormany was one of Doug's closest friends and happened to be an ordained Episcopal pastor at the time. Just 13 days had passed since the couple had met. Trip wasn't thrilled, but agreed to perform the ceremony.
It was being loyal to my friend.
Doug invited almost no one to the wedding, not even his teenage daughter.
He loves this girl, his 15-year-old daughter. He goes and gets married and doesn't even tell her.
Yep.
Tommy Benefield is Doug's cousin.
It's bewildering. I would have talked him out of it. Eva certainly would have talked him out of it.
Eva was stunned, still dealing with an unspeakable trauma. 9 months earlier, Eva's mother and Doug's wife, 56-year-old Renee Benefield, had died. Eva had discovered her mother's body.
I couldn't get in through the front door, and she wasn't answering the doorbell or the knock, so I crawled through these bushes, and then...
Your parents' bedroom?
Yeah, so I could see directly in there. The blinds were open. The lights weren't on or anything. And then I could kind of see her silhouette, so I went to the door and went to my neighbor.
The neighbor kicked in the door. There Renee was, dead from an undiagnosed heart ailment. In the aftermath, Doug was right there for his daughter.
After my mom died, he really took kind of a motherly role along with a fatherly role. He made sure, you know, I could go to him with boy problems, with school drama, with anything, and he would take care of it.
But 9 months later, Eva discovered Doug had a new woman in his life.
I was upstairs, and he said, "Eva, you need to come down and talk to me and Ashley." And I said, "The only thing that you would need to tell me about y'all's relationship is if you proposed." And as soon as those words came out of my mouth, he said, "We're married."
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Doug encouraged Ashley to try and mother a reluctant Eva, who was only 9 years younger.
He basically told her that I needed somebody. I needed a motherly role in my life. And I didn't think that I needed that.
The situation became even more complicated when Doug and Ashley allowed Eva's friend Sydney to move into the house. 2 teenage girls and a new young wife were a combustible combination, and during one heated argument with Ashley, Doug cracked.
In a terrible moment, he discharged the gun into the ceiling of his house.
His best friend Tripp says that Doug was filled with regret.
In his words, he said, "I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life."
But that did not end the relationship. Just the opposite. 2 days after the gun incident, Doug and Ashley threw themselves a formal wedding reception, complete with guests this time. The newlyweds also forged ahead with Ashley's grand plan to create an inclusive ballet company.
The idea of it was really great.
But implementing it was something else entirely.
Once Ashley started causing trouble and stress, that's when he started to realize how I was feeling.
Even though there was a growing tension at home between Ashley and Eva,
He promised me that things were going to be okay eventually.
Doug went ahead with helping Ashley follow her dream, establishing a ballet company in Charleston with a unique mission.
Being more inclusive, having dancers of every shade, color, body type things, those are all things that I'm a big believer in.
Ashley and Doug hired ballet master Michael Wise to train the dancers. They talked a big game about big money, he says. $10 million they promised they'd secured from backers and boldly named their new company the American National Ballet, or A&B.
When you first met Doug, what kind of guy did he strike you as?
Kind, a very serious businessman, and had a very methodical approach to a lot of what he did.
Did he know anything about ballet?
No, and he was very open about that. I was supposed to be working with Ashley to get her to understand how a company should be run.
What was your first impression of Ashley?
Young, ambitious. We were all hoping that she would rise to the occasion.
In the summer of 2017, Ashley and Doug were there as A&B held auditions.
I definitely thought that it was something that I wanted to be a part of.
Dancer Amanda Hemsley hoped A&B would be her chance to prove herself.
Being a Black female dancer, it's so challenging to audition for other companies where you don't fit the mold exactly. So I thought that this would be a great fit for me.
You know, if you're in the ballet community, you know there's a lot of crap that needs to change.
Athena Nikolakopoulos interviewed with Ashley and loved what she heard about her vision.
It sounded like she was genuinely excited to get this new company going and that they were going to try and do things a little bit differently.
The majority of her dancers were individuals that were very much like her. Had the drive, had the want, but hadn't necessarily been given an opportunity.
Dancer after dancer proudly posted to social media they'd joined the A&B family. But that wasn't the only family Ashley had in mind.
On top of starting a ballet company, Ashley also wanted to get pregnant.
And in the midst of putting together the ballet company, that's exactly what happened.
How did that sit with you?
It didn't sit well at all, so this kind of felt like another stab in the back. There was a lot of stress, because now they basically have 2 teenage daughters and a little girl on the way.
At the end of the summer in 2017, some 40 dancers from all over the world began arriving in Charleston to work with Ashley. From the first meeting, they realized what they'd been promised at A&B wasn't what they'd be getting.
We get there and we're like, where is she? And Doug announces that she's bedridden with a really difficult pregnancy, and so she wasn't going to be there for the first however many months.
It was explained to me that they were going to be developing this state-of-the-art facility in downtown Charleston. Day one, when we're ready to start up, they were like, can we use your facility?
Each day something would happen that just made us feel even more unsettled.
Hi guys. Sorry.
The shoes kept dropping.
The company typically pays for the dancers' point shoes. I remember one day we came in and they're like, yeah, unfortunately we have to half your allotment of shoes.
This sounds like a professional baseball team not supplying their players with bats.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
On top of all this chaos and confusion, the dancers were having trouble getting paid. Their checks were often late, if they arrived at all. Doug was scrambling to meet the company's obligations.
We would ask him, hey, where's the money for our shoes or our paychecks? He would go to the bank and just pull out cash and give people cash.
Paying you out of his own pocket in cash is not the kind of thing that's going to inspire confidence.
No, confidence had gone a long time at this point. That was very long gone. And we really thought, we're like, well, when Ashley comes back, like, that might be what fixes all of this.
But Ashley wasn't coming back. At the end of August, citing her difficult pregnancy, Ashley went back to Florida to live with her mother, while Doug tried to make the ballet work in Charleston.
What did you make of that?
I was just kind of like, okay, I mean, that means I get more alone time with my dad to hang out.
We had a decent amount of sympathy for him, too. We're like, geez, he got sucked into this whole thing, and poor thing, he doesn't really know what he's doing. He's just trying to be there for us as much as he can.
The rumblings about trouble in the Benefield's marriage grew louder.
It seemed like it was something that was going to crash and burn very shortly.
Very shortly. In September, while Doug was at an event for the ballet, Ashley and her mother drove from Florida to the house in Charleston and dropped a bombshell. The marriage was over.
She came to Charleston and packed up her things and then left Doug this scathing note about all the reasons why she didn't want to be with him anymore.
In the note, Ashley called him possessive and controlling. She wrote the incident when he'd fired a gun into the ceiling, as well as other unsafe behavior, had left her fearful for her life and the safety of her unborn child.
I could see the look in his face when he read it. I could just tell his heart was broken.
But Ashley's note was just the beginning.
He had this family that he thought was going to be perfect, happy, and faithful, and it fell apart in the most spectacular way.
It wasn't long before the relationship became truly toxic.
She thought Doug may have poisoned her.
This is a pretty long letter. She says at the end, "Do not harass or try to follow me or I will call the police." She does not seem like someone who is open to getting back together.
Ashley's scathing note to Doug left little doubt about her feelings.
I really think that Ashley thought that that was going to be it. Just pack up her stuff, leave a note, and it was going to be over.
But Doug wasn't ready to give up. He sent Ashley text after text, begging her to reconsider. One of them read, "I am on my knees and face before God, asking you to forgive me." But Ashley was not in a forgiving mood. She decided to call the authorities on Doug.
Cops showed up at my house after she left my dad, and he wasn't home. I had to answer the door. She got Child Protective Services involved from Florida. I hadn't even seen her in months.
Ashley told police that Doug had anger issues and all about the day he fired his gun inside the house. Investigators interviewed Eva.
I was constantly having people come up to my door and questioning if my dad was a good dad. And it just made me so angry because he was, and I just kept having to repeat myself. My dad is a good dad. He's never done anything to hurt anyone. He wouldn't hurt anyone.
Doug was investigated by CPS and ultimately cleared.
He'd been evaluated by a psychologist, a full psych evaluation, who said, there's nothing wrong with this guy. He's not dangerous.
Doug was struggling on another front. Overwhelmed by handling the ballet company.
By mid-October, we were notified that Ashley was stepping down.
Did she jump or was she pushed?
Pushed.
Why?
Because there needed to be leadership, and Ashley was not being a leader.
Wise was in the room when Doug got a call from Ashley, who was more than a little upset.
The phone rang, he picks it up, and you hear Ashley screaming, "You took my ballet company away from me."
With Ashley gone, Doug brought in new leaders who made drastic changes. On October 23, 2017, some of these dancers, including Amanda, were called into a meeting, told to sign non-disclosure agreements, and fired.
And Doug was of no help here?
No, Doug was, nowhere to be found that day.
Just like that, half the company's dancers were gone. 2 days later, Ashley posted on the ballet's social media pages, "I am completely devastated by what has been done, and the new leadership has destroyed all that we worked so hard to build."
What happened hurt. It helped to know that someone was on our side there and that, this was never the intention.
It seemed like a beautiful idea had gone up in smoke. Within months, the American National Ballet was done. Doug was out more than $100,000. His ballet nightmare was over, but his friends say a new one was just beginning. Ashley now had questions about Doug's first wife, Eva's mother, Renee, and how she died. Ashley texted Doug. Wait, what did she die of again? Doug told her that Renee had a 75% artery blockage. Ashley, I thought I have heard you say something about medications or something, like bad drugs?
I've read the autopsy report. It's clear. Died of a heart attack, essentially.
It soon became clear why Ashley was so interested in how Renee died. She told Doug's cousin, Tommy, she thought Doug had poisoned Renee, even though Doug was out of town at the time.
What was your reaction? You must have been like, what?
It's out of left field. I'm really confused by that.
The local police say they closed the case in 2016 after they got the coroner's report. But Ashley talked to writer Alice Robb, shared her theory about Renee, and made another shocking allegation.
She said that, as a dancer, she'd always known her body well, and that she really felt like she was even more nauseous than she would have expected as a pregnant woman. And she said that she had been poisoned.
Ashley believed that Doug has been poisoning her while she was pregnant with their daughter. They were both big tea fans, and she hearkened back to the times that Doug was bringing her tea in bed because she didn't want to get out of bed.
Doug, still hoping for a reconciliation and having no idea about Ashley's suspicions, sent her a birthday gift at the end of November 2017.
He had purchased a lovely teapot and teacups and saucers and this specialty tea that was supposed to be for pregnant women.
The gift fed Ashley's growing concerns about Doug.
She takes it to the police department as hazardous materials and claims that it's how he's poisoning her.
What do the police make of that?
They treat it as hazardous materials that day. They test it and prove out it's not any poisonous materials.
Ashley also sent her hair to an independent lab for testing to determine if she'd been poisoned. The report said her hair showed higher than normal levels of aluminum, zinc, and other metals. But Doug's lawyer disputes those findings.
She had gotten plenty of lab work done because she was pregnant. Her medical records in South Carolina, her labs all came back normal.
3 weeks before her due date, without Doug knowing, Ashley checked herself into the hospital.
I don't think she was poisoned, but that doesn't mean she doesn't think she was poisoned.
She was at Tampa General Hospital claiming the child had been exposed to heavy metals in utero because her husband had poisoned her.
Ashley also claimed, without any proof, that Doug was physically abusive and had held her prisoner back in Charleston. She said he had been stalking her in Florida. With no way to know if what Ashley told them was true, the hospital took precautions for her safety and assigned her a new name, Christina. 3 days later, doctors performed a C-section. The baby girl was healthy. But Ashley continued to worry her baby had been poisoned.
Both Ashley and her daughter were here every single day receiving treatments.
Do you think Ashley believed she was poisoned? Chat now with the 48 Hours team on Facebook and X.
The news that Ashley had given birth to a healthy baby girl in March 2018 took more than a month to reach Doug, says his lawyer, Stephanie Murphy.
The baby was born about 3 weeks early. Doug had no idea.
Baby Emerson did not have Doug's last name, and Doug was not listed as the father on the original birth certificate. No one was.
Ashley wanted to raise her daughter with her mother alone. She didn't want to co-parent.
And she kept pursuing her accusation that Doug had killed Renee. Eva says that at one point, Ashley and her mother Alicia even pulled Eva aside.
And they suggest to you that your father had a part in your mother's death?
Right.
What exactly did they say to you?
They said, we're concerned about your safety. Your dad's a bad guy. He does bad things. I just told them to get away from me.
But mother and daughter did not go away. Months later, Eva says, they renewed their accusations.
And what did they say that time?
Your dad poisoned your mom.
How'd you react to that?
I said, no, he didn't. I was there. I found my mom. And that caused a lot of emotional trauma. My dad wouldn't do that. He loved my mom.
I want to be clear about something. Was Doug ever charged with any crime?
No, sir, and none of the allegations were true.
Ashley did not respond to our request for an interview, but she appeared convinced that she and her 3-month-old baby had been poisoned. In her search for help, Ashley signed them up for 26 consecutive days of treatment in this hyperbaric chamber.
It can detox the body of heavy metals and other toxins.
Safety Director Robert Cederoth says Ashley and her daughter spent 40 hours in this 12-person chamber that looks more nautical than medical.
We call them dives because we're almost simulating diving, like when the divers go down.
Ashley's daughter was the youngest patient ever treated here. Adults wear a plastic hood while inside the chamber, but with a baby, things got a bit tricky.
Ashley's daughter was really small, at that time. So we ended up taking this ring and we put it around her waist. It was like she was like a little ballerina. And so half of her body was actually inside of the hood.
In the summer of 2018, the poisoning allegations came to a head when the Benefield squared off in a Bradenton, Florida courtroom. Doug wanted to see his daughter, and Ashley was requesting an injunction to keep him far away. An audio recording was made of the proceeding. Here, Stephanie questions Ashley about the state of her pregnancy.
You also told Lakewood Ranch OBGYN that the pregnancy had been uncomplicated, correct?
Is there a page you would like me to reference?
I'm just asking him. Is that what you told them?
I wouldn't say it was uncomplicated. My entire life has been complicated for about 2 years.
Okay. The OB wrote right in her report, pregnancy has been uncomplicated. Was that inaccurate?
I'm not responsible for what the doctor or the nurse writes.
Okay. You have accused your husband of poisoning you.
Yes. It is heartbreaking that somebody you would trust would do something to you.
But the judge was not persuaded by 2 days of testimony and the lab test results Ashley had submitted.
There is not a single scintilla of credible evidence that Miss Benefield has ever been poisoned or suffered from any illness of any poison.
That ruling cleared the way for Doug to finally see his daughter. Days later, he and Ashley met outside the sheriff's office to exchange the baby. To Stephanie's surprise, Ashley was suddenly very accommodating.
She then immediately went right up to Doug, handed the baby over, nice as she could be, very cordial.
She even suggested that the three of them, Doug, Ashley, and the baby, spend time together.
And Doug said, okay, sure, because Doug wanted to make the transition as easy for his daughter as possible, because to her, he was a stranger. And I talked to Doug. I said, okay, that's fine, of course. Please be careful.
For the better part of the next year, Doug, Ashley, and their daughters seemed happy, at least according to Doug. Doug even moved to a nearby apartment in Florida.
Doug thought they were back together, that they were doing what they were supposed to do in the beginning, which was to slowly get to know each other, be a family. I thought everything was going to be okay.
But in August 2019, when he met Ashley to pick up his daughter, Doug was stunned to see what he thought was an engagement ring on Ashley's finger.
Doug hired a private investigator to find out what was going on.
The private eye told Doug that Ashley was seeing another man. And in November 2019, Doug filed for divorce. Soon after, Ashley began lodging complaints against Doug.
Ashley accused Doug of sexually abusing his daughter. She accused him of a whole litany of things.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Doug vehemently denied harming his daughter, and authorities agreed there was no evidence. Doug then wrote an email in March of 2020 to the sheriff's office accusing Ashley of having a split personality. But a few months later, Doug did something that seemed unthinkable. In a head-spinning move, he announced that he and Ashley were going to try again to be a family and were relocating to Maryland.
Tommy, I know we keep circling back to the same question, and I'm sorry. It's just any viewer of this hour is going to also be asking, what did Doug need to see before he would say, time out, we're done?
He is still believing he can rescue and save and have a marriage, a loving marriage.
After somebody says you're sexually abusing your daughter, don't you cut and run? Don't you say, I tried.
Right.
I'm out.
Right. Yes, most people do, but not Doug.
She's still presenting to him and to others that they're going to put all this back together again.
Friends held their breath, but hoped for Doug's sake that a miracle reunion was about to happen. Tripp says he knew better than to even try to talk Doug out of reconciling with Ashley.
There's nothing I can say that could possibly turn him around on this. He's going to do this if it kills him.
Go inside the couple's short but troubled relationship at 48hours.com.
He said that their relationship was going really well, and he was just excited for a fresh start.
On September 27, 2020, Doug Benefield was preparing to begin his new life. He was moving with Ashley, their young daughter, and Ashley's mother, Alicia, from Florida to Maryland.
So it's Sunday night, and Doug is over at Ashley and Alicia's house, and Doug is filling up the U-Haul. Alicia decides to take the baby for a walk down to the neighborhood park.
Ashley stayed behind with Doug. Soon after, a neighbor heard screams and called 911.
I heard somebody screaming outside.
Then Ashley walked to a different neighbor's house, carrying her .45 caliber handgun.
She walks next door, gun in hand, tells the neighbor, I shot Doug in self-defense. The neighbor calls 911.
It's right next door to me. She just came over. Her estranged husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
Ashley can be heard sobbing in the background.
When the ambulance arrived, Doug was still breathing.
Police and EMTs assisted Doug, who had been shot twice in his right leg and arm. Police noted that the bullet from his arm traveled into his chest cavity. Doug lived for an hour, but died at nearby doctor's hospital. Ashley was not arrested that night as detectives began investigating her claim of self-defense, but they'd have to do it without her.
She didn't speak to detectives at all.
But Ashley's mother, Alicia, told the detective that she and her daughter were victims of domestic abuse and had been living in fear of Doug for 3.5 years. She claimed that they tried to get help, but nobody would help them. And Ashley's lawyer, Faith Brown, told the detective that Ashley was creating an escape plan to get away from Doug once and for all. Brown told the detective Ashley was in danger, has a psychologist, 2 attorneys, and a burner phone. Ashley also had a safe location and a rental car set up. Ashley was expected to implement the plan the very next day because, as Ashley's lawyer told the detective, she was very concerned Doug was getting wind of the plan. But as detectives investigated, Ashley's claim of self-defense became problematic. A detective noted that Doug had no guns or weapons on his person or near him.
She shot an unarmed man.
In the days and weeks after the shooting, Ashley did not reveal what happened in that moment. In November of 2020, Ashley Benefield was charged with second-degree murder. The arrest warrant noted it appears that Ashley had exhausted all legal means of keeping the child away from Douglas before the shooting. She's pled not guilty.
I don't know what Ashley believed.
Writer Alice Robb says it's difficult to know if Ashley was a victim or a master manipulator.
Was she genuinely afraid and just trying to protect her baby and save herself? Or was she trying to get Doug out of her life just out of spite? Just because she hated him?
I feel like part of her wanted to believe that my dad was a good guy, but then there was also a part of her that was scared of him. And I think that part took over.
Why was she scared of him?
I think all the allegations she made, she started to believe them a little too much.
Ashley's mother, Alicia Byers, was granted custody of her grandchild. While awaiting trial, Ashley was free on bond and saw her daughter frequently.
Do you ever think about her, Ashley?
All the time.
What do you think?
I just want to know, why would she take away my father, my best friend, knowing that I don't have another parent?
I knew something was wrong one day when he didn't send me a good morning text. And then a couple hours later, I got a call that she had shot and killed him.
Over the past year, Eva has been exploring her feelings on TikTok, using her unique sense of humor to soothe her pain. She posts frequently under the name Eva the Freakin' Diva, where she jokes that her brand is the girl with the dead parents.
This isn't the chum bucket.
I use dark humor. I don't know, I guess it's the way my brain's wired, but I'd rather not sit and sulk. I'd rather just make light of a situation.
These days, Eva cherishes her time with Sully, the dog who once belonged to her father. And she and Tommy still go to the beach at Sullivan's Island, where her father's ashes were scattered.
When we stand out here now, all these months later, any peace?
I don't think I'm gonna get peace until after the trial's over.
Do you ever dream about your dad?
A few times.
What happens in the dream?
We're in this big house, and he enters the room through a door, and he says, "I've been in hiding, and I need you to help me." And then I run with him, and there's a tunnel, and then I wake up.
Coming up next.
Guess what? I know everybody's been waiting for the day. Next week is her first in-person hearing, which means I'm gonna see her in person for the first time since she killed my dad.
A daughter comes face to face with her father's accused killer, learning disturbing new details.
It's been difficult for me hearing about it over again and over again and over again. It's a lot.
They made this all about Doug. They cast Doug in the worst possible light.
For the first time, Ashley Benefield takes the stand, claiming Doug tried to poison her with a gift.
When I opened it, there was an overwhelming, strong chemical smell, and I got like an instant headache.
She says Doug was abusive.
He'd come at me like he was gonna hit me. He threw a chair at me.
Then, in tears, Ashley's story of what she says happened that night.
He said, "You're done." I was scared to death.
She's the kind of person who eventually believes her own lies. But just because someone believes what they're saying doesn't make it true.
And I just started pulling the trigger. And it just kept crumbling.
That's next on 48 Hours. Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go, with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives.
Like a John Grisham novel come to life.
Real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
And now, the trial of the former ballerina accused of shooting and killing her estranged husband is set to begin.
Ashley Benefield is on trial for the murder of her husband in the so-called Black Swan murder case.
After so long since the murder, I was really excited, a little bit anxious about the trial that we were finally going to get some answers.
Okay, bring the jury.
When you think of the term Black Swan, you think of the movie Black Swan. I definitely think it was apt for this case because you have somebody who the prosecution is claiming is a femme fatale.
The former ballerina and bikini model married 54-year-old Doug Benefield after a whirlwind 13-day romance.
On the early evening of September 27, 2020, Ashley Benefield was scared to death and felt she had no choice but to defend herself.
I could see how upset he was getting. I was trying to get him to leave.
He is simmering when he arrives at Ashley's home. He's on a slow boil, actually, because he knows that this relationship is over.
He started screaming at me. He said, "I don't have to leave. I can stay and spend the night if I want to because I'm your husband."
Doug Benefield viewed Ashley Benefield as his property.
He said, "You can't leave me."
Then what happens?
He hit me on the side of the head. I ran.
Where?
To my room.
Ashley, did you have anything in your room that could protect you?
I had my gun. Doug was standing in the doorway. His face was red. Like the veins were bulging in his neck. The way he was looking at me, it didn't even look like Doug. I held the gun like in front of me and I said, "Stop." He started coming towards me and then he lunged at me.
There was an effort by the defense to paint Ashley as the victim. And the thing is, Doug is the victim in this case. Doug was the one that was murdered.
You say he slapped you?
He hit me.
Was his hand open or closed?
I don't remember.
This was an act. You grabbed your firearm. Is it in a holster?
I don't remember.
Somebody has a story, and when it's not true and you call them on the details, they often say, I don't remember.
So he lunged. Was his fist up when he lunged?
I don't remember.
I believe Ashley Benefield was an abused woman.
She just came over, her estranged husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
Deadly force was absolutely justified under the circumstances.
Whenever the defendant takes a stand in a criminal case, it is always a huge risk. It's either you are acquitted or you walk yourself right into prison.
I thought he was gonna kill me. There was nowhere to go. I was trapped.
After nearly 4 years, the trial of Ashley Benefield, the former ballerina charged with second-degree murder for shooting her estranged husband Doug, began in the summer of 2024.
We stand with Ashley!
In the lead-up to the trial, a small group appeared near the courthouse to support Ashley's claims of self-defense.
We stand with Ashley!
Outside the Manatee County Courthouse this morning, a group showing solidarity for Ashley Benefield.
Among the supporters was Ashley's mother, Alicia, and Ashley and Doug's 6-year-old daughter, Emerson, who stopped to speak to a reporter.
It feels like I'm standing up for the right thing and that I'm doing the right thing for her.
Emerson's public show of support caught the attention of her half-sister, Doug's daughter, Eva Benefield.
Well, there's a lot of things that I could say.
Eva, known as Eva the Freakin' Diva on TikTok, let her 500,000 followers know just how she felt.
So I think that we should probably stop shoving cameras in 6-year-olds' faces when they have no idea what's going on.
Lead prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell says she believes Ashley killed Doug to guarantee she'd always be number one in Emerson's life.
I think Ashley wanted sole custody of her child and was very afraid that she was going to lose custody altogether.
In her opening statement to jurors, O'Donnell outlined the state's theory of the case.
This was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder.
There were allegations.
Defense lawyer Neil Taylor made his argument that Ashley shot Doug in self-defense after he physically assaulted her.
Douglas Benefield was a violent abuser. Ashley Benefield's efforts to placate him was absolutely consistent with what abused women do.
For the first time ever, Ashley would tell a jury what she says happened that night.
How are you feeling this morning, Ashley?
Nervous.
All right, try the best you can to relax and we'll get through this.
Okay.
The trial took place in Bradenton, Florida, near where Ashley was living with her mother when she killed Doug. It was the culmination of a long and complicated relationship.
And it goes all the way back to when they met, back in 2016.
In 2016, Doug was living in Charleston, South Carolina, and was a consultant for technology companies. At 54 years old, Doug was 30 years older than Ashley, but as she told the jury, she was still smitten with him.
He was funny, very smart, charming. We just instantly clicked.
The couple met at a political dinner, At the time, Ashley was working in the Sarasota campaign office of Donald Trump and sometimes helped stir up the crowds at his rallies. Ashley had also done some swimsuit modeling and, for a time, had danced with the Maryland Youth Ballet. Only 13 days after meeting, they married.
A lot of people ask, why did he marry her so fast?
Doug's civil attorney, Stephanie Murphy.
I mean, come on. When Doug first met her, she was every single bit as beautiful as those modeling photos will show. She was a knockout.
Describe for us the man you thought you'd married.
He was very loving and attentive. We laughed a lot. And he made me feel very special and loved.
Doug invited almost no one to the wedding, not even his teenage daughter, Eva.
He loves this girl, his 15-year-old daughter. He goes and gets married and doesn't even tell her.
Yep.
Tommy Benefield is Doug's cousin.
It's bewildering. I would have talked him out of it. Eva certainly would have talked him out of it.
Eva was still dealing with an unspeakable trauma. 9 months earlier, her mother, Doug's then-wife, had died. It was Eva who discovered the body of 56-year-old Renee Benefield in their home, dead from an undiagnosed heart ailment.
After my mom died, he really took kind of a motherly role along with a fatherly role.
And he made his daughter a promise.
And I said, are you going to remarry? Are you going to start dating? Are you going to have other kids? Like, what's going to happen? And he said, no, Eva, I'm here for you. I don't plan on doing any of that.
But just 9 months later, Doug told his daughter he had married his new girlfriend.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Doug encouraged Ashley to try to mother a reluctant Eva, who was only 9 years younger.
He basically told her that I needed somebody. I needed a motherly role in my life. And I didn't think that I needed that.
Ashley would later tell jurors there was tension in the house, and just months into their marriage, the couple had a major argument about Eva.
He pulled the gun out and held it to his head. He said that he was gonna blow his brains out, and I was gonna have to watch him. And he pulled the trigger and he shot a hole in the ceiling in the kitchen.
Doug's friend Trip Cormany remembers Doug being embarrassed when he told Trip that he fired a gun in the house.
In his words, he said, I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life.
But even that did not end the relationship. Instead, 2 days later, Doug and Ashley went ahead with a formal wedding reception. The newlyweds were also planning for the future. Ashley had a grand plan to create a national ballet company.
I don't know that Doug could spell ballet before he met Ashley.
And they wanted to start a family.
You know, when you love somebody, what do you want to do? You want to make her happy.
Even though there was a growing tension at home between Ashley and Eva,
He promised me that things were going to be okay eventually.
Doug went ahead with helping Ashley follow her dream, establishing a ballet company in Charleston with a unique mission. Athena Nikolakopoulos interviewed with Ashley and loved what she heard about her vision for the new company, the American National Ballet.
She didn't want a cookie cutter company. She wanted girls that were tall, girls that were short.
As they worked to get the company off the ground, Ashley focused on her other dream, becoming a mother. There was one problem. Doug had a vasectomy, but he agreed to have it reversed, and before long, Ashley was pregnant.
How did that sit with you?
It didn't sit well at all. He said he wasn't planning on doing any of that. So this kind of felt like another stab in the back.
In the summer of 2017, Some 40 dancers from all over the world began arriving in Charleston to work with Ashley. But Ashley was nowhere to be found.
We get there and we're like, where is she? And Doug announces that she's bedridden with a really difficult pregnancy.
At the end of August, Ashley went back to Florida to live with her mother, while Doug tried to make the ballet work in Charleston.
We decided together, he said that he couldn't take care of me, he was too busy, and that my mom could take care of me better, so I was happy to go.
But one September evening when Doug was out, Ashley and her mother came back to the house in Charleston. Ashley would tell the jury about that night.
I had decided that I was going to leave him, and so I went back to get my things and left him a letter saying why I was leaving.
In the letter, Ashley called Doug possessive, controlling, and manipulating. She wrote about that incident where he'd shot a hole in the ceiling in the kitchen and wrote that his behavior has left me fearful for my life and safety, as well as that of my unborn child. She told the jury why she was so afraid of him.
He would throw things or break things or smash things. He would come at me like he was going to hit me. He told me I was lucky that he punched walls instead of me.
Nearly a year after Doug's death, we spoke to his family lawyer, Stephanie Murphy, about the letter Ashley left Doug.
I really think that Ashley thought that that was going to be it. Just pack up her stuff, leave a note, and it was going to be over.
But the letter didn't deter Doug. He sent text after text begging Ashley to reconsider. Instead, she reported Doug to the authorities.
She got Child Protective Services involved from Florida.
Ashley told police that Doug had anger issues and was violent. Investigators interviewed Eva.
I was constantly having people come up to my door and questioning if my dad was a good dad. And it just made me so angry because he was.
After an investigation, Doug was cleared. But Ashley began asking questions about the death of Doug's previous wife, Eva's mother, Renee. Ashley texted Doug. Wait, what did she die of again? Doug told her that Renee had a 75% artery blockage. Ashley, I thought I have heard you say something about medications or something, like bad drugs? Doug's cousin Tommy says Ashley told him she thought Doug had poisoned Renee.
What was your reaction? You must have been like, what?
It's out of left field. I've read the autopsy report. It's clear. Died of a heart attack, essentially.
But Ashley, who said she was more nauseous than she would have expected as a pregnant woman, was suspicious.
Ashley believed that Doug has been poisoning her while she was pregnant with their daughter. They were both big tea fans, and she hearkened back to the times that Doug was bringing her tea in bed.
After she left him, Doug sent her a package of tea for her birthday.
When I opened it, there was an overwhelming smell, like a real strong chemical smell, and I got like an instant headache.
Did you report it to the police?
Yes.
According to a detective, it was determined that the substance that was mailed to the victim was just tea.
What was the result?
No charges.
By the start of 2018, Doug closed the ballet and was out of communication with Ashley. But he wanted to be part of his new baby's life and asked Stephanie to send Ashley a letter, allowing him to be there for the birth. Instead, the next day, Ashley checked into the hospital without telling Doug. It was 3 weeks before her due date.
She was at Tampa General Hospital claiming the child had been exposed to heavy metals in utero because her husband had poisoned her.
Ashley told hospital staffers that when Doug learned she was pregnant, he hit her and locked her in a room back in Charleston. She also said Doug had stalked her in Florida. No charges were filed, but the hospital took precautions and registered her under her middle name, Christina. 3 days later, doctors performed a C-section, and Ashley gave birth to a baby girl. Doug was not notified.
I think that Ashley's proposal from the very beginning was, you'll have nothing to do with this child.
The news that Ashley had given birth to a baby girl in March 2018 took more than a month to reach Doug. Ashley said she still believed he had poisoned her and the baby, so she signed them up for 26 consecutive days of treatment in this hyperbaric chamber.
It can detox the body of heavy metals and other toxins.
Safety Director Robert Cederoth says Ashley and her 3-month-old daughter Emerson spent 40 hours in total in the chamber. She was the youngest patient ever treated here.
Ashley's daughter was really small, so we ended up taking this ring and we put it around her waist. It was like she was like a little ballerina, and so half of her body was actually inside of the hood.
In the summer of 2018, the poisoning allegations came to a head when the Benefield squared off in a Bradenton, Florida courtroom. Doug wanted to see his daughter, and Ashley was requesting an injunction to keep him far away.
Okay, let's go ahead and go on the record of Benefield versus Benefield. Case number.
An audio recording was made of the proceeding. Ashley accused Doug of poisoning her and told the judge about that incident when Doug fired a gun into the ceiling.
And if you'd begin by stating your full name for us, please.
Douglas Glass Benefield.
Doug admitted to firing the gun and explained to Ashley's attorney that during an argument, he wanted Ashley to stop speaking.
So at this point, you decide that the next way that you're going to do to keep her from talking about anything is to shoot the gun?
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of great ways to figure out what I was thinking. It was definitely to put a stop to the conversation.
But Doug denied poisoning Ashley. In September of 2018, the judge ruled in Doug's favor, granting joint custody. She said she didn't believe anything Ashley had to say.
There is absolutely not a single scintilla of credibility that I'm attaching to anything that was testified to, at least in this hearing of Miss Benefield.
Days later, Doug and Ashley met at the sheriff's office so he could see his 6-month-old daughter for the first time. Stephanie says Ashley suggested that the three of them, Doug, Ashley, and Emerson, spend time together.
And Doug said, okay, sure, because Doug wanted to make the transition as easy for his daughter as possible, because to her, he was a stranger.
Over the next year, the three of them were together frequently.
Doug thought they were back together, that they were doing what they were supposed to do in the beginning, which was to slowly get to know each other, be a family. I thought everything was going to be okay.
But things were not okay, and Doug was in for a big surprise, Stephanie says. In August 2019, Doug found out Ashley was dating another man. Doug filed for divorce, and Ashley lodged a new round of accusations about him.
Ashley accused Doug of sexually abusing his daughter. She accused him of a whole litany of things.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Doug vehemently denied the allegations, and the sheriff's office seemed to agree. They investigated and closed all of the cases regarding allegations of abuse without filing charges.
I want to be clear about something. Was Doug ever charged with any crime?
No, sir.
In the summer of 2020, Ashley made plans to move to Maryland with her mother and daughter. Despite the difficulties in their relationship, Doug chose to join them. Doug told friends he still wanted to be part of his daughter's life and continued to hope he could reconcile with Ashley and have a fresh start in Maryland.
There's nothing I can say that could possibly turn him around on this. He's going to do this if it kills him.
It was September 27th, 2020, the day the turbulent relationship between the Benefields finally boiled over. Doug arrived at Ashley and her mother Alicia's home to help pack for the move.
Alicia decided to take the baby for a walk down to the neighborhood park.
Ashley stayed behind with Doug. It was shortly thereafter when Ashley ran to her next-door neighbor, sobbing and carrying her .45 caliber gun. And he called 911.
It's right next door to me. She just came over. Her estranged husband attacked her, and she says she shot him.
Doug had been shot in the leg and chest. He lived for an hour but died at a nearby hospital. Ashley's attorney met her at the sheriff's office. Detectives began investigating Ashley's claim of self-defense, but they'd have to do it without her.
She didn't speak to detectives at all.
But after a month of investigation, in November of 2020, Ashley Benefield was charged with second-degree murder. She pleaded not guilty. After 17 days in jail, Ashley posted a $100,000 bond. It was nearly 3 years later, in July of 2023,
Next week is her first in-person hearing.
that there was a key hearing in the case that brought everyone together, including Doug's daughter, Eva.
Which means I'm going to see her in person for the first time since she killed my dad.
Ashley's team had asked for the case to be dismissed, claiming she had shot Doug in self-defense, and prosecutors were fighting it.
Did you do the autopsy of Doug Benefield?
Yes, I did.
Eva wasn't fully prepared to hear the details of her father's death.
The projectile path went through the chest wall on the right side, and then it hit the right lung.
It's talking about my dad in a way that doesn't feel very humane. They referred to the murder, the shooting, as the incident, and they pulled up pictures of his body, and, they referred to my dad as the victim.
Did you in fact process the victim's shirt in this case?
I did.
It's been difficult for me to kind of grasp what's going on, and then hearing about it over again and over again and over again, it's a lot.
The judge denied Ashley's motion to dismiss the case. Ashley would have to stand trial for killing Doug. And that is when Ashley would tell the jury her version of what happened that night.
I said, I'm done, and you need to leave now. He said, you can't leave me.
One of the first witnesses at Ashley's murder trial was Doug's 23-year-old daughter.
Please state your name.
Eva Benefield.
Eva had lived with Doug and Ashley when they were newlyweds and saw firsthand how they interacted.
Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad get physical with her?
No.
Prosecutors next called John Sant to the stand.
Do you solemnly swear with her?
He is the neighbor Ashley ran to after shooting Doug. His 911 call was played for the jury.
Calm down, honey, calm down. She's with me now, quite upset. The weapon is here. Said that he attacked her and she shot him.
Prosecutors asked Sant if he had noticed any bruises on Ashley that night.
At any time during this interaction with Ashley, did she appear to have any injuries?
No.
The next morning, prosecutors called Ashley's mother, Alicia Byers, to the stand.
Good morning.
She swore that Ashley had never discussed with her details of the shooting.
To this day, you've never talked about it? No.
Prosecutor Rebecca Friel found that curious.
She never said, Mama, he beat me, or he was coming at me, or any of those things. We thought that was important to show that the person who's probably the closest to her in the world was unaware of those things.
To show how Ashley behaved when she didn't get her way, prosecutors called Detective Chris Gillum.
Where do you work?
Manatee County Sheriff's Office.
Detective Gillum testified that Ashley once demanded that he arrest Doug in court before a sitting judge for contacting her when he was not supposed to. Gillum refused.
Her tone turned from the crying to very aggressive, and she says, you will effing arrest him in front of the judge, and I will make sure you do it.
What did you say to that?
I said, it's not going to happen. She started crying again and came out with a comment, something to the effect of, I can't believe you're willing to allow Doug to kill me and the baby.
The prosecution presented this video found on Doug's phone to show that Ashley was never afraid of Doug. It was taken just 1 week before the shooting. Doug is recording himself playing a game with Ashley, her mother, and Emerson. But maybe the prosecution's most important witness was medical examiner Dr. Russell Vega.
And that's the chest injury, just to the right side of his right nipple.
He testified about the 2 bullets that hit Doug in the leg and chest.
Would you be so kind as to stand up and kind of point on your body to where the entrance wound would be?
Certainly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Because prosecutors say Doug was shot in the side, they theorized that he was likely turning to run away when he saw Ashley point the gun.
Your Honor, at this time, we take rest.
It was defense lawyer Neil Taylor's turn.
The defense calls Ashley Benefield.
He called Ashley to the stand and asked about the times she was afraid of Doug.
Sometimes he would drive really scary, yelling and screaming at me, like running up on curbs. One time he almost hit a tree. He would get in my face. He'd yell at me. He'd come at me like he was going to hit me.
And Ashley said Doug once punched the family dog, Sully.
He punched him in the face so hard that he knocked him out. I just remember screaming because I thought he had killed him.
At an earlier hearing, Doug was asked about Sully.
You also punched the dog the day that you discharged the firearm.
He jumped up. He's a big dog, and he jumped up in my lap. And yeah, I mean, I admit I hit him. I didn't hit him like you would, hit a punching bag or anything, but I hit him.
Taylor asked Ashley to tell jurors her version of the night she shot and killed Doug. Ashley testified that, as the couple packed for their move to Maryland, Doug became agitated because Ashley had insisted Doug get his own apartment.
I tried to change the subject. I could see how upset he was getting.
Ashley told jurors that Doug bumped into her and pushed a box into her side. She said he hit her in the face when she tried to leave. Then she said she ran into a bedroom where Doug followed her, and that is when she grabbed her nearby .45 caliber gun, one of 3 in the home.
I held the gun like in front of me, and I said, stop. And he turned and he got into this like a fighting stance. He started moving his arms and his hands around. He started coming towards me, and then he lunged at me, and I started pulling the trigger.
Ashley, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why you shot Doug.
I was scared to death. I thought he was gonna kill me.
As you sit here today, Ashley, how do you feel about what happened?
Horrible. He's the father of my child. So I'm gonna have to explain it all to her.
After a break, Ashley returned to the stand. Taylor then produced an old text from Doug's previous wife, Renee. It was undated, but Ashley said she found it on an old cell phone. He read aloud what Renee wrote to Doug.
I was deeply disappointed that you distorted the truth about who you really were when I married you. I loved you, though finding out you weren't really what you pretended to be. You kicking me so hard on New Year's Eve on our honeymoon because you were having trouble functioning in certain areas. You holding a gun to your head twice in my home.
When you hear that text message, it helps Ashley Benefield's case.
Criminal defense lawyer Matt Timpanek, who attended and followed this trial, says he feels that text supports Ashley's contention that Doug was abusive.
This isn't the first woman he has potentially abused.
Doug's divorce attorney, Stephanie Murphy, says she once asked Doug about that text, and he confirmed Renee had sent it to him.
Doug said that, yes, they had some struggles, and yes, there was an incident during their honeymoon, but it was not at all as Renee was describing it.
Ashley's lawyer ended her direct testimony.
Where was your firearm?
Ashley would now have to go head-to-head with lead prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell, who had a surprise in store.
Judge, if I could have her step down so she can demonstrate.
What do you make of Ashley's testimony? Chat now with the 48 Hours team on Facebook and X.
Good afternoon. We're back on the record in State versus Ashley Benefield.
Ashley Benefield walked back into courtroom 6A after a lunch break. She'd spent 2 hours that morning testifying about the alleged abuse at the hands of her husband, Doug.
State, you may begin your cross-examination.
But now, as she took the stand again,
I would like to just start with a couple of issues.
it was prosecutor Suzanne O'Donnell's turn. And Ashley admitted Doug never physically abused her before he allegedly hit her the night of the shooting.
Doug Benefield never punched you, ever. Correct?
Yeah, I'd say that's correct.
Doug Benefield never choked you, ever.
No.
He never kicked you.
No.
The prosecutor called Ashley down from the witness stand to demonstrate what happened that night.
And I held the gun out in front of me and I said, stop. Got into this like fighting pose and he like turned sideways. And he was like moving around with his like arms in his hands. And he started like inching forward towards me.
I think it's invaluable in a case like this that the jury see what her version of events is. So he's standing there, he turns to like this and starts moving his arms around.
Like that.
Well, show me. What was he doing?
Kind of like I really got like this, and he was like making like fighting motions. I don't know. I'm not a fighter. I don't know.
I don't know that it came off as genuine as she expected it to. We have to look at what she said versus the physical evidence and see if it matches.
When he lunged at me, he came very quickly.
Okay, so he lunged. Was his fist up when he lunged?
I don't remember.
The state insists Ashley's story didn't match with the medical examiner's testimony that Doug was shot in the side. Doug's cousin Tommy agrees.
If Doug was really lunging at her the way she said, he would have been presenting the front of his body. That's not how he was shot.
She's the kind of person who eventually believes her own lies. But just because someone believes what they're saying doesn't make it true.
But the defense continued to portray the idea that Doug was abusive.
They made this all about Doug. They cast Doug in the worst possible light.
Did you counsel Douglas Benefield?
I did, yes. Both Ashley and Doug.
They called Dr. Jason Quintel, a trauma counselor who worked with the couple in the months before the shooting.
Doug occurred as someone who was domineering and at times would be super controlling.
Did you conclude whether there was an intimidation issue present?
Ashley stated that she was scared of Doug.
Mr. Taylor, call your next witness.
Defense calls Bruce Ferris.
Domestic violence expert Bruce Ferris met with Ashley after the shooting and said her behavior was consistent with having suffered abuse. He addressed that video of Ashley, her mother, and Doug laughing just a week before she killed him. Ferris said victims of domestic violence often appease their abusers to keep the peace.
We've all heard the term walking on eggshells. They're trying to avoid aggression by their partner because they've grown to believe that there's a threat here.
Taylor says Ashley was only pretending to get along with Doug so he wouldn't harm her or Emerson.
Are you saying to me that Ashley was like, I'll just sort of keep him happy so that he doesn't get violent with me?
That's exactly what I'm saying to you.
Domestic violence is absolutely a real problem. People that feel like they cannot get out, they have no way to get out. That is not this defendant.
But in closing arguments, Prosecutor O'Donnell told the jury Ashley was not afraid of Doug. Not the day of the video, and not the day she killed him.
She did not have to shoot him. She had an agenda, and it worked for what she wanted, and she got what she wanted. Sole custody of the child. And that's murder. Thank you.
But in his closing, Ashley's attorney reminded the jury Ashley spent years trying to get authorities to protect her and Emerson from Doug.
She filed complaint after complaint after complaint, calling Doug Benefield's behavior to the attention of the authorities, with no result.
He insisted Ashley only shot Doug because her life was in danger that night.
I've presented to you everything that I possibly could to show you what Ashley knew about Doug at the time they took place, to show you that her action in using deadly force was reasonable. We're confident you will return a verdict of not guilty in this case.
The jury began deliberating in the afternoon and continued late into the night. After nearly 7 hours,
I've been informed there's a verdict.
Lawyers, friends, and family returned to the courtroom to hear the jury's decision.
The defendant is guilty of manslaughter, a lesser included offense.
Guilty of manslaughter, but not second-degree murder.
Murder, too, requires some kind of intent. Manslaughter doesn't require that. It's more of heat of passion. The jury is essentially saying, we don't think she pre-planned this, but we also don't think she was justified in doing it.
Any conviction that will put Ashley in prison comes as a welcome relief to Doug's family and friends.
I also want to advise you.
The highlight of the trial for me personally was hearing the verdict read out loud. The second best thing was hearing the click of the handcuffs.
We are walking to my car from the courthouse.
Eva updated her followers about the verdict.
My dad got the justice that he deserves.
She's hoping one day to play a role in the life of Emerson, who is still being raised by Ashley's mother, Alicia.
I hope that one day she'll grow into a strong young woman and I'll be able to get to know her and explain to her who her father was and show her all the pictures and videos and just really tell her how life should have been.
Ashley faces up to 30 years in prison. State Attorney Ed Brodsky, who runs the prosecutor's office, says they will ask the judge to sentence her to the maximum.
This was an example of someone that wanted to take the law into her own hands, and that was the bridge that she crossed too far.
As the years have gone by and the colors fade, you see that she's actually the Black Swan and always has been.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go with the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives.
Like a John Grisham novel come to life.
Real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.